Good
morning, everyone. In yesterday's session, we discussed about field injection. Okay, we discussed about field injection in the last class. Can anyone tell me what is field injection in the spring?
Sir, hello, sir.
Yep. What is field injection in the spring? Come on. What is field injection in the spring framework?
Assign the values to the variable or reference. We can go with field injection.
The process of injecting
Reference value.
Target property.
The process of injecting dependent bean into target bean using target class field is called as field injection. The process of injecting dependent bean into target bean using target bean field, target class field is called as field injection. How to enable field injection?
Injection and initialization same or different?
When you go for a field, initialization or injection both are same. Right? Injection nothing but initializing the value to that variable, initializing object to that variable. Good.
Okay.
The process of injecting dependent bean into target bean using target class field is called as field injection. Right. How to enable field injection in the spring now? To enable field injection, we will configure at auto wide annotation at field level. We'll configure at auto wide annotation at field level. Suppose if I specify private user DAO of user DAO, this is a field which currently doesn't have any value. Okay. For this, I am going to specify auto wide. So what does that mean? Why I specified auto wide annotation at the variable level? Because I want to inject the object into that variable. I want to inject that object into the variable. Able to follow this, guys?
Yes, sir.
I want to inject that object into the variable. Now, whenever we specify this field injection in a class, now I'm going to take a class called public user service. Public class user service. How to represent this class as a string bean? Using a
annotation
service. By using annotation called @service. Now
Sir, that is service is not mandatory, I think.
it is mandatory to represent the class as a spring bean, right? My user service class I want to represent as a spring bean. How to represent my class as a spring bean? By using stereotype annotation.
Yes, sir.
Sir, one question, sir. Sir, okay. And you have mentioned address service to identify the service class. Okay. Suppose if I'm using JP repository, okay. So there is also I don't think so. We have to mention that repository annotations.
For repository it is optional, sir. I will come to that point. For repository it is optional, but for service it is mandatory. Okay. Why it is optional for the repository is because it will extend the properties from JPA repository. Special priority will be given to that.
Yes.
But for business classes, service is mandatory.
Yes, sir.
Good. Now, so here I am giving @service annotation. Why I am giving @service annotation? To represent this class as a spring bean, I am giving @service annotation. Inside the spring bean, I am using user DAO. For user DAO, I am using auto wiring by using @auto wide. Then what will happen in the spring? What IOC will do here? IOC will create the object for a user service because it is represented as a spring bean. And IOC is going to initialize user DAO variable with the user DAO object. Because for this variable, I have specified auto wiring. That means I enabled field injection here. I have enabled field injection here. Got my point? Right. Now, when I use this field injection, IOC container should store the value to this variable. What value it has to store to this variable now? What value it has to store to this variable now?
user DAO object.
User DAO object it has to store to this variable. So from outside the class, it has to initialize the value to the private variable. Now, generally, as per the Java rules, can I access private variables from outside of the class?
No.
Generally, we cannot access the private variables from outside of the class. If private variables we can't access from outside of the class, how IOC can inject the value to this private variable from outside?
Using reflection
Reflection
API.
API.
Reflection API. So in the
Yes,
yesterday's
sir.
class, we have seen how to access private variables from outside of the class also. When we specify auto void at field level, then IOC will use reflection API to inject value to the private variable. When we use auto void at field level, then IOC will use reflection API. IOC will use reflection API to inject value to the private variable. That means IOC is not respecting OOPS principles. In this scenario, IOC is not respecting OOPS principles. In this scenario, IOC will not respect OOPS principles. According to the OOPS, private variables should not access outside of the class. Private variables are class members. Within the class only we need to access them. But IOC is accessing from outside of the class, or IOC is not accessing from outside of the class? IOC is accessing from the class. Is it respecting the OOPS principles, or it is not respecting the OOPS principles?
Not respect.
It not respecting.
Is not respecting OOPS principles for field injection. Good. So with this, some people thinks that whenever we add auto void, internally it will call the setter method, or internally it will call the constructor. No. When you add the auto void at the field level, internally reflection API will be used to inject the value to the private variable. So in the yesterday's video, you can see how that private variables can be accessed from outside of the class. Good. Now, so with this, we understood how setter injection is working, constructor injection is working, and field injection is working. Can anyone tell me what is setter injection now? Can anyone tell me what is setter injection now?
Injecting dependent bin to target bin using target bin setter method.
by calling setter
Injecting
Target
dependent object into target object by calling target bin setter method. Right. Now, what is constructor injection?
injecting the dependent
Injecting the dependent bin to target bin using target bin parameterized constructor.
Parameterized constructor is called as constructor injection. And what is field injection?
the process of injecting dependent bean into target bean.
Target object by calling target bin variable, that is called as field injection. Right. Now,
Using auto annotation in the field level, then
when we go for in setter injection, target bin object will be created first. Then dependent bin object will be created. Why? Because how the dependent bin will be injected? By calling target class setter method. In order to call the target class setter method, target bin is required. So first priority will be given to the target bin creation when we go for setter injection. All right. Now, and one more thing, calling setter methods is not mandatory. Setter injection is optional. Setter injection is optional. If dependent object is not available, still target object will be created, because after creating the target object, setter method may call, may not call. That's not mandatory. Without calling the setter method also, that target bin object can be created. Right. When you go for constructor injection, how constructor injection will happen? Guys?
First dependent object will be created in the constructor.
first creating
How constructor injection will happen?
Parameterized constructions.
Parameter constructor will be called. So
Yeah.
in order to call the parameter constructor, dependent object is required or dependent object is not required?
Required.
Required. So
Is
which one
required.
should be created first now?
Dependent object.
Dependent object.
In constructor injection, dependent object will be created first. Dependent object will be created first. Then target object will be created. In constructor injection, dependent object will be created first, then target object will be created. In constructor injection, all the dependents are mandatory. In constructor injection, all the dependents are mandatory. If I have a constructor with two parameters as the dependent objects, IOC has to pass those two dependents to the constructor arguments, then only constructor injection will happen. Setter injection, optional, whereas constructor injection, mandatory. Now, when you go for field injection, which one will be created first?
Target.
In field injection, target will be created first or dependent will be created first?
Target.
Target is created, then dependent will be injected. In field injection, dependent will be injected by using target class object. In field injection, target will be created first. In field injection, target will be created first. But guys, one thing we need to understand here, whenever you go for the Spring Boot, component scanning is happening. What is that component scanning? In the order, it is going to scan the packages and it is going to create the objects for them. Okay. Now, so if I want to create a service class object, inside the service class, DAO should be injected. Now, whenever they are scanning, DAO will be created first or service will be created first here?
DAO.
DAO will be created first. Why DAO will be created?
Because we
Package
need
structure.
Alphabetical order, it will first come.
In the alphabetical order, the packages are going to scan and it is going to create the object for that. So whenever you go for Spring Boot, how the objects are getting created for the beans? First, it will scan the base package. In the base package, if any class is there as a Spring Bean, for that class object will be created. After that, it is going to scan the sub packages in the alphabetical order. So in those sub packages, if a class is represented as a Spring Bean, then object will be created for that class also. Is this clear for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, here,
Sir, can you please repeat it once again?
sir, whenever you start your project, whenever you run your project, how objects are going to be created for your classes. Okay, for that, Boot is using one concept called component scanning. Component scanning is used to identify which classes are represented as Spring Beans. Component scanning is the process which is used to identify which classes are represented as Spring Beans. Which classes are represented as Spring Beans? Able to follow this? Good.
Yes, sir.
Now, from where the component scanning is going to start? The component scanning will start from base package. What is a base package? What is a base
Which have a
package?
starter
Guys?
class.
Base package is the one which contains a start class. And first it is going to scan the base package. In the base package, if any class is available as a Spring Bean, for that class, object will be created. After the base to scan sub packages. How it is going to scan the sub packages? How it is going to scan the sub packages?
Alphabetical order.
Alphabetical order.
Sub packages will be scanned in the alphabetical order. And Ram, please mute your mic. Sub packages are going to be scanned in the alphabetical order and they are going to create the objects. IOC is going to create the objects for them. So how many ways we can do dependency injection in the Spring now? 3 ways we can do. One is by using setter injection, another one is by using constructor injection, and another one is by using field injection. Okay. Now, out of these 3, which one is recommended, which one is not recommended? Guys, in my point of view, it's better to go for constructor injection, because first the dependent object will be created and the dependent object will be ready. That the dependent object will be passed as a parameter to constructor injection. Okay, it will be very straightforward. When you go for field injection, IOC is not respecting OOPS principles. IOC is not respecting OOPS principles, and internally it is using reflection API to inject the dependent object into target object. That's fine. But what the software experts are telling in the industry is field injection is not recommended. Better to go for constructor injection. The reason for that is whenever you go for a field injection, you will declare your dependent objects like this: object 1, object 2, object 3, object 4, object 5. Now, like this, n number of dependents we are going to declare in our class as a field injection properties. Okay. Now, whenever we do the code review, generally we will do the code reviews in the projects, right? To verify are we following the coding standards or not. Whenever we do the code review tool will understand that we just declared variables in the class. As per the Java conventions, as per the Java rules, how many variables we can declare in a class? How many variables we can declare in a class?
More than one, sir.
More.
N number.
Yes,
How
sir.
many
N
variables
number,
we can
yes.
declare in a class? N
N-
number. There is no
N
limitation.
numbers.
How many methods we can write in the class?
More than
N
one.
number.
More
How
than
many lines of code we can write in the Java program? N
More
number.
than
of
one.
N numbers.
There is no limitation. There is no limitation for that. Now, when I declared 5 dependents objects like this in my target class, whenever I do the code review tool will think that just I am declaring variables here. Whenever I declared multiple dependent objects here, my code review tool will think that I have just declared a variables like this. But actually, these are not the normal variables. These are the field injection variables. That means in one class, I am using 5 dependent objects. In one class, I am using 5 dependent objects. So when you use 5 dependent objects in one class, you are breaking single responsibility principle, which is one of the solid OOPS principle. Single responsibility. Single responsibility, nothing but one class should perform only one operation. One class should perform only one operation. But here, what we are doing, we are writing multiple operations here. We are writing multiple operations here. 5 different objects I am declaring here. 5 different objects I am declaring here. That means my Java class is going to perform 5 different operations. I am breaking single responsibility principle. But my code review tool can identify that problem. My code review tool cannot identify that problem because my code review tool will consider these things as just variables. So the button is increasing on my class. Today, I have added 5 dependent objects. Tomorrow, somebody will add one more dependent object. People will add multiple dependent objects here. If you keep on adding dependent objects, the button will increase on the class. The maintenance of the class will become very difficult. So you are violating single responsibility principle, which is one of the solid OOPS principle. So that's why what the expert people are telling is you don't write that field injection, you write a constructor injection. You write a constructor injection for your class. Whenever you write a constructor injection, if you declare your dependent objects as constructor arguments, user DAO. Similarly, report DAO, roles DAO, triggers DAO, TDAO. If you declare like this as a constructor arguments, now code review tool will identify that this class object creation is the difficult process because this class constructor is taking too many arguments. This should be reduced. So you need to take only 1 or 2 arguments for the constructor. You should not take these many arguments for the constructor. If you take these many arguments for the constructor, code review tool will figure out that this class is having complex instantiation process. Code review tool is going to identify this class is having complex instantiation process. So that's the reason people will say that don't go for field injections as they are easy. Better to go for constructor injection. If somebody adds one more dependent for the constructor argument, code review tool will throw the exception. Code review tool will specify there is a problem. There is a problem. So the class instantiation process is complex that you have to modify that code. You need to avoid that problem. So that's why field injections are not recommended to use in the project. People will try to use constructor injections only. This is not my statement, guys. A lot of experts in the industry told the same concept. See here, field injection. You just type. Field injection is not recommended. The reason why field injection is frowned upon are follows. You cannot create immutable objects as you can with constructor injection. Your classes have tightly coupling with your DI container and you cannot be used outside of it. Your classes cannot be instantiated without reflection. Your classes cannot be instantiated without reflection API. So these are some of the reasons why field injection is not recommended. Right. And some more people are saying field injection is not recommended. Field injection is not recommended. The good, the bad, and the ugly of the field injection. Field injection considered harmful. IntelliJ disabled. Field injection is not recommended. Use auto-wide annotation warning. Field injection is not recommended. So why I changed my mind about field injection? To field inject or not to field inject in the spring. To field inject or not to field inject in the spring. Constructor injection should be used instead of the field injection. So many software experts are saying that field injection is not recommended. Better to go for constructor injection. Now let us see what they are talking about that. Why field injection is not recommended. Now, current documentation, the Spring framework defines 2 major types of injections. In reality, there are 3. Spring documentation is mainly saying that 2 injections are there, but actually 3 injections are possible. Constructor, setter, field. Constructor, setter, field. Here, repository we used with auto-wide at the field level. This means to get the bean called user repository, which is auto-generated by the Spring, we will use it to handle the code operations. Right. Constructor-based injection. You just declare a constructor and take a parameter. Guys, really, is this auto-wide annotation is required here? Now, when you specify auto-wiring at the field level, field injection will happen. But here they are writing at auto-wiring at the constructor. Is it really required to write the auto-wide at the constructor when there is only one constructor?
Not required.
Not required.
Not required.
Not required. It is optional. Now, here they have declared a variable and they have written a setter method. For the setter method, they have written auto-wide. What is the meaning of that?
Then only Spring will identify and inject.
What is the meaning of that?
By using the setter method, the dependent bean is injected.
Setter method is going to call the setter method to perform the dependency injection. Now, I am giving auto-wiring at the variable level. What will happen?
It will use reflection API to inject.
Reflection API, generally we cannot. Yes.
Now, as you can see, this is the cleanest way to inject the dependencies, and it avoids adding boilerplate code, and there is no need to declare a constructor for the class, no need to write a setter method. The code looks very nice because just we have declared a variable. For that variable, we have given auto-wide. It's very simple. It's looking beautiful also. Neat, the concise, but as the code inspector already hinted us, there are some drawbacks to this approach. This is very simplest approach and it looks beautiful also, very easy to perform, but there are some drawbacks available when you go for this approach. What are the drawbacks? Field injection dependency injection drawbacks. Field based dependency injection drawbacks. This allows immutable field declarations. We cannot declare the class as immutable. Uses single responsibility principle violation. It is going to violate single responsibility principle, that is from solid. As you know, In object-oriented programming, the solid acronym defines 5 design principles that will make your code understandable, flexible, and maintainable. In that solid, 5 is nothing but single responsibility principle, meaning that a class should be only responsible for a single part of the functionality of the software application, and all its services should be aligned narrowly with that responsibility. One class should perform only one action. Okay. With the field injection dependency, it's really easy to have a lot of dependencies in your class and everything will just fine, look fine. In the constructor based injection is used instead. As more dependencies are added to your class, the constructor grows bigger, the bigger, and the code starts to smell, sending clear signals that something is wrong. So that is what I explained. If you write too many fields in the too many field injections here, that code review tool will not guess any problem. But if you write a constructor with too many parameters, code review tool will smell that there is a problem, because if our constructor arguments are growing, the class instantiation will be difficult, then easily code smells are going to be identified that signals that your code is something wrong. There is something wrong in your code. But if you go for field-based injection, it is not going to give you such kind of warning. But if you go for constructor injection, it is going to give you that warning. So that's why if you go for field injection, it is very easy to violate that single responsibility principle. So it is not at all recommended. Having a constructor with more than 10 arguments is a clear sign that the class has too many collaborators, and maybe a good time to start splitting the class into smaller and more maintainable pieces. If a class or constructor is taking 10 arguments, that means it is a critical functionality. We need to change it. We need to split that into multiple classes. And a tightly coupled with dependency injection container, when you go for a field injection, hidden dependencies. And so these are some of the drawbacks are available when you go for field injection. So instead of the field injection, they're suggesting us to use the constructor injection. Guys, do you understand why the field injection is not recommended now? Guys, do you understand why the
Yes,
field
sir.
injection is not
Yes, sir.
recommended? It is going to violate single responsibility principle, and code review tools also cannot figure out the problem. If you write a constructor, if you add too many parameters for the constructor as a dependent objects, code smells will happen. Then you can fix that problem. Good. So which one to
But
be
sir,
used?
in real time, we have so many repositories, no, sir.
You have to split into multiple classes. Don't call all the repositories from one service class. You have to create multiple services. Okay. You have to create multiple services and you need to call. Modularity you need to implement. All right. So setter injection is optional. Constructor injection is mandatory. Field injection is also mandatory, but not recommended to use the field injection in the project because some drawbacks are available. We have seen what are those drawbacks also.
Then why not setter injection?
Setter injection is optional. So separate setter methods you need to write. Code will become boilerplate. Suppose if I have 10 dependencies, 10 setters I have to write, right? It will increase the number of lines of the code.
Instead, we can write we can use Lombok also, right?
Yeah, that you can do that. You can do. Even if you use Lombok, you don't see the code, but in the dart class file, the code will be available.
Okay.
Yep. Fine. So with this we understood what is IOC, what is dependency injection, how many types of injections we can use, and which is recommended to use. So which is recommended to use as of now?
Constructor injection.
Constructor injection is used. So when I write only one constructor, auto-wide annotation is mandatory or optional?
Optional.
Auto-wide annotation is optional.
Optional.
Thank you guys.
One question I was having.
Yep, sir, tell me.
Circular dependency issue.
In the constructor, that is not possible.
Okay.
Yeah. In the constructor, that circular dependency is not possible. If you have circular dependency, you should go for constructor. Sorry, setter.
Okay.
Setter, sir.
But generally, will you see any scenario for circular dependency in the real time?
No, but in
No.
No, that is theoretical.
interview it will get asked.
They will ask you, but practically we don't have such kind of. I have never gone through that circular dependency scenario in my experience. For interview purpose, we should know that, but in the reality, that is not required.
So we can say in general terms, it's a difference between field injection and construction injection. And we recommend to, okay, this is a construction injection we can generally recommend, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Are we going to, see the bean instantiation using the static factory method?
Yeah, we will see that.
Okay.
Sir, one doubt. First of all the while component scanning, all the packages and the classes will be scanned right in the alphabetical order.
Yeah.
At that time, if you have user service class, means user service class required user DAO class. So if first user DAO class will be created object, right?
Yep.
Then it's against sector method dependence injection.
So whatever the definitions that you studied in the spring, dependent will be created fast or target will be created fast. They are not applicable in the boot. So why it is against? That object is created, that object kept ready in the container. Wherever that is used, that is simply going to inject it. It is proactive, we can say. It is not violation, it is a proactive.
Okay. So first all the classes will be, first of all, create all the classes object will be created, then only injection.
Yeah, injections are going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, I saw online in internet about field injection. By using field injection, we cannot perform unit testing for that class. Is it true?
Sorry, unit testing will be difficult.
Okay, sir. That is also one limitation.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you. See you tomorrow. People who are joined for today, please send me a message to that WhatsApp number which I have given. This is the number 630-192-1083. I will tell you the enrollment process. Thank you.
Sir, sir, one question, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, the project class, sir. That link, how I can get that link actually?
Send me a
Project class.
message to this number, sir. WhatsApp message.
Ashok, I need to give one compliment, Ashok, for you.
Yes, sir. Tell me.
See, I have actually 6 years of experience in Java. Before I worked 3 years of experience CJ, and now as working as support guy. See, your way of excellence very nice in JTP, Ashok. Really, I learned so much in from Maven. Really, I don't know. I am using Riley Maven install, but I don't know why you are using. But I got so much clarity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And I'm Maven build also. See, almost I come to 6 years of experience real time, but now I got you. Why are you using Maven build all things? Really, thank you.
Good.
Sir, one question.
Uh-huh.
In class more than 5 or 6 fields, then how to manage the constructor injection?
Sir, generally, first thing is we should not use those many dependents in one class. That is single responsibility. Okay. If you have really such kind of functionality, then you have to accept it as a problem and you have to go with that.
Sir, why auto wire annotation is not mandatory in constructor while mandatory in setter?
So when you don't write at the constructor, by default, when the object is creating for the target, that constructor will be called. You don't need to tell explicitly to call the constructor. Okay, whether you specify that annotation or you don't specify that annotation, by default, that constructor will be called by IOC. But for the setter, if you specify, then only it is going to call, otherwise it will not be called. Got it?
Sir, give me that number, sir. WhatsApp number is, sir.
Yeah, I have given here, sir. You can see on the screen. Yeah.
Sir, typed in chat box, sir.
Yeah, you can take the screenshot now. For enrollment, send the message to this number. Yeah, this is what 630-192-1083.
Okay, sir.
Right, guys. Thank you.
Sir, what topic is going on in project batch?
Maven completed today, and tomorrow we'll start with GitHub.
Okay, so project has not started yet.
Project will start after 1 month. First, tools has to be completed.
Okay, so including all the projects and the tools, it will take 3 months, no, sir?
Yep, 3 to 3.5.
Okay, sir.
Right, guys. Thank you.